In an 1850 sermon by church minister John Angell James, young men were advised to remain content with their station in life, rather than seeking to rise above it. Determined to do for your just advancement all that skill, industry, frugality, and honorable principle can accomplish, but nothing more. This was a common theme found amongst early 19th century Dissenters, Protestants who were not part of the established church. Many churches in this group were heavily influenced by evangelical teaching from the 18th century, with its strong emphasis on conversion, the Bible, the atoning death of Jesus Christ, and a focus on the afterlife. These aims manifested in teaching such as James's, which focused on spiritual advancement. However, near the end of the 19th century, the question was increasingly asked, should people really be content with their lot in this earthly life, or ought they aim to improve it? Dissenters needed to find an answer to this question, as attendance at their chapels, particularly amongst the working classes, was declining rapidly. In response, special ministries and services were introduced in an effort to reach workers, such as the Salvation Army created by William Booth. General Booth set out to rescue the poor from the effects of poverty, even if, like many dissenters, he regarded poverty as being the result of sin. Temporary aid coupled with conversion was the Salvation Army's mission. As Booth is reported as saying, "You cannot warm the hearts of people with God's love if they have an empty stomach and cold feet." This period also witnessed a shift in attitudes amongst the dissenting churches, with many now regarding social reform as part of their spiritual duty, and among the populace, strictly spiritual matters were increasingly trumped by a new and growing emphasis on the here and now. This brought the dissenters into closer alignment with the activities and thinking, on social matters at least, with socialists, leading to the development of what was called ethical socialism. Ethical socialism denounced the free market and competition in favor of a moral economy and cooperation. Capitalism, in the eyes of these socialists, created poverty, urban squalor, immorality, and social dislocation, and was responding to the changing whims of the wealthy, not to people's genuine needs. As Professor Mark Bevere explains, for ethical socialists, the important task was not to provide some formal theory of abstract economic processes, but to examine the results of these processes and then to assess their moral acceptability. Economies, the ethical socialists argued, were within the sphere of conscience, and therefore capitalists, consumers, and workers had to put the well-being of their fellows before their selfish interests in profits, prices, and wages. This would require personal transformation and a moral revolution, not necessarily state intervention or a new political party. A leading figure in the ethical socialist world was the minister John Trevor, founder of the Labor Church and the monthly magazine Labor Prophet, which launched in 1892. Trevor believed that God was working through the labor movement, and so he sought to marry ethical socialism and Christianity. "Socialism," he wrote, "is to our corrupt age what Christianity was to the world at the beginning of our era." As time wore on, the focus of the labor church shifted increasingly towards politics and alignment with the Independent Labour Party. Trevor was even involved in the establishment of the Manchester ILP. In 1906, the shift was such that the president of the Labour Church announced that it was to have nothing to do with the supernatural. However, the impact of dissenters and the roots of this movement must not be forgotten. Beyond the impact of the Labour Church, many leading Labour figures later described how their speaking and leadership skills had been honed in dissenting churches. One such man was George Jacob Holyoake, who had been present at the sermon preached by James, which had advised young men to be content with their station. Although Holyoake initially agreed with James, he later threw himself into the labor movement, dropped his religious principles, coined the term secularism, and even became known as an enemy of religion. Nonetheless, even Holyoake acknowledged how his life as a dissenter had laid the foundation for his involvement with labor. The habit I had acquired of frequenting chapel and missionary meetings, he asserted, led me to attend political assemblies. This further enlarged my views of life and duty, which the religion taught me had hidden from me.